Hello, and welcome to Sonata She Wrote. This video is an analysis of the third and final movement of Weyse's 8th Piano Sonata in G minor. Let's get right into it. It's not much of a stretch to say this movement is heavily influenced by C.P.E. Bach's Fantasia style. The angular and slightly contrapuntal P theme yields to a transition which uses these accented augmented sixth chords to increase tension. The sixth in question is compressed to a second here. I think it's impossible to overstate what a towering figure C.P.E. Bach was in the 18th century. Even aside from the fact that Karl worked and was well known in Weyse's city of birth, Bach's reputation far outshone his own father's, J.S. Bach. C.P.E. Bach is also my favorite Bach as well. Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven all cite C.P.E. Bach as an influence, and he was an influential voice in changing the sonata form from a binary or ternary variant into the narrative process that it was during Weyse's life. As the transition continues, a B-flat minor chord briefly and terrifyingly flashes in and out of existence before, thankfully, Weyse brings us to a half cadence in the major. If you've been following along with the previous two movements, we've had nothing but tragedy so far. Can this B-flat secondary theme sustain a major mode to the cadence? Only just barely. After an initial statement in major mode, the secondary theme tonicizes the sixth chord, G minor, before fully collapsing into that key. The secondary theme tonicizes the sixth chord, G minor, also the tonic of the entire sonata, before fully collapsing into that key. After a few tense bars when it almost seems as though Weyse might be transitioning into a second S theme, he modulates back to B-flat major. But even still, the gravitational pull of G can be felt in the final bars of this exposition. A potential expositional closure in G minor is averted again, as in the first two movements, by tonicizing the sixth chord in G minor, or 4 in B-flat, which is E-flat major. The development of this movement is one of the most expressive in the sonata. After a brief statement of P, Weyse energetically moves through several key areas using a germinating motif of the P theme and the transition. This sonata includes not a PAC, but a half cadence that does briefly establish a tonal area. C minor from the second movement has returned, and the presentation of the secondary theme in this key doesn't augur well for our hope of emerging from the darkness of the sonata form. reversing with C minor and moving into a more typical chromatic development, Weyse retransitions back to the recap. The main difference in terms of correspondence between this and the exposition is that Weyse has changed the voicing of themes. Whereas the primary theme initially presented in a tenor voice with bass accompaniment, he now presents it in the bass voice with accompaniment in the upper voices. The transition, again opening with the same augmented sixth figures, is a bit expanded and dramatically opens a half cadence in the tonic. Unfortunately, one thing that could have saved us was Weyse's tendency to block cadences with suspensions, which really prevents them from fulfilling a structural role. As the secondary theme continues, there's a little hope for the major mode, but Weyse may surprise us yet. As in the other two movements, Weyse again uses a deceptive cadence to dramatically highlight the conflict between major and minor tonalities. This section initially opens in E flat, similarly to when the exposition collapsed into minor. However, unlike the exposition where the minor mode version of S seemed unavoidable, its major mode counterpoint quickly collapses first into C minor, and then unsurprisingly modulates back into the tonic for a dramatic rush to the essential secondary closure. Weyse, along with Baldassare Galuppi, was chosen by my Patreon. A theme of the channel that I really enjoy is searching for composers who are both outside of the classical quote-unquote canon and are also outside of an Austro-German tradition. Both Galuppi in Venice and Weyse in Copenhagen are on the very near periphery of Austria and the nation-states which today are unified in Germany. But they're certainly outside of the vague idea of a canon of classical composers, and I hope that together they demonstrate how much excellent music there really is outside of that tradition. If you'd like the ability to vote on pieces to be analyzed by the channel, the current poll is between two late Romantic titans, Tchaikovsky and Brahms, and a piano concerto and symphony by each. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought of this analysis and Weyse in general.